Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Sela Social Studies. We just finished the middle colonies. Hopefully you did well on your checkpoint. Now we're going to talk about the southern colonies. So the original mainland southern British colonies spanned from the Chesapeake in Maryland to the south of Georgia. The colonies focused on plantation style farming and the production of cash crops like tobacco, rice, indigo, and sugar. The use of plantation farming led to large populations of enslaved Africans in these colonies, as well as a social stratification between the wealthy white plantation owners and the poor white and black laborers. These colonies would include Maryland, Virginia, Carolina, which was originally one Carolina, later divided between North and South Carolina, and Georgia. English colonies emerged along the North American eastern seaboard for a variety of reasons. The primary reason that early Europeans migrated to America, especially in the New England and Middle colonies, was to practice religious freedom. People migrated to the southern colonies for a slightly different reason. Immigrants from England, primarily men, migrated to the Virginia colony to find gold and silver that the Spanish were so successful in finding in South and Mesoamerica. Once the men realized that there was not an abundance of precious metals, they began cultivating cash crops like tobacco. Maryland was originally established as a safe haven for Catholics, eventually expanding to all Christians. Georgia was founded as a refuge for English debtors and prisoners. After the Chesapeake was successful in cultivating cash crops, it quickly spread to the rest of the southern colonies, and plantation farming became the calling card of the South. So a little bit more on the founding of the colonies. In 1585, Sir Walter Raleigh received a charter to establish a colony in the New World and dispatched a group of British subjects out to help the British Empire. Due to hostilities and lack of food supplies, the original group of just over 100 settlers, led by Rolfe was unsuccessful in establishing a permanent settlement. In 1587, Sir Walter Raleigh sent a second group of settlers, this time led by John White. White led a group of British subjects to the New World and settled the first colony of Roanoke in Dare County, North Carolina. It had brief success, and John White returned to England for more supplies. However, upon his return in 1590, the settlement was abandoned, and there was no one left to be found. All that was left was from the original settlers was a carved sign that said Croatoan. This is to become known as the Lost Colony. In 1607, the Virginia Company of London sent over 100 people to help expand the British Empire and find the Northwest Passage to Asia. Later that year, they landed in northern Virginia and started a settlement and named it Jamestown after King James I of England. Jamestown became the first permanent British settlement in the New World. In 1608, the popular John Smith became the leader of Jamestown and instituted a rule of no work, no eat. This helped Jamestown become successful. However, after Smith was injured in a gunpowder explosion, he returned to England never to return. And after Smith's departure, the settlers went through some trying times. Between 1609 and 1610, Jamestown went through what is called the starving time, where settlers starved to death, sometimes resorting to cannibalism. By 1613, the colonists were trying to make money for the Virginia Company. One man affected the southern colonies more than anyone in history. In 1613, John Rolfe, the husband of Pocahontas, successfully cultivated the first tobacco crop. Soon afterwards, indentured servants came to Virginia, and in 1619, the first recorded slaves arrived from Africa. The effect of tobacco in the colonies was the rise of the Atlantic slave trade. Also in 1619, the Virginia House of Burgesses was established and served as a representative-based government, an idea that would spread throughout the colonies. In 1634, King Charles I gave land to George Calvert, Lord Baltimore, to create a haven for Catholics in the Americas. This colony would be named Maryland. In 1663, 8 lords proprietors were given charters from King Charles II to settle land south of Virginia. The Carolina colony, remember, North and South were combined as one, was founded. The main seaport in Carolina was named Charlestown after the king. South Carolina would later become an official royal colony in 1729. Finally, in 1733, James Oglethorpe received a charter to form a colony between Spanish Florida and South Carolina. This land was to be settled by debtors, or people who owed money to the king, and in 1752, Georgia became a royal colony. The southern colonies were mostly made up of young, single, white men who were a labor force of indentured servants. These were men who made a deal with English leaders that exchanged travel to the New World and a period of free labor. Upon arrival in the New World, the young men would spend a period between 4 and 7 years working off their debt. However, after some white indentured servants began to work off their debts and purchase land, more land was needed for expansion. One of these cases was the case of Nathaniel Bacon. Bacon was somewhat of an elitist who was mad at the Virginia governor, Governor William Berkeley, for not protecting the land of Western farmers like Bacon. Bacon assembled a militia made up of white and black indentured servants and black slaves. They marched on Jamestown and burned it to the ground. So after Bacon subtly died of dysentery, the rebellion fell apart and the Virginian government felt the need to separate the black and white race even more. So the Virginian government decided to give land to white indentured servants and enslave more black people, creating more of a divide between the races to attempt to eliminate any more rebellions. After Bacon's rebellion, southern colonies moved more towards using more slave labor force from Western Africa. The enslaved African labor population became more vital to the cultivation of tobacco because they were immune to European diseases and soon made up 50% of the southern population. Now back to the old mathematics equation, geography plus climate equals economy. So the southern colony's climate was very temperate. The southern climate consisted of hot, long summers that was accompanied by rainstorms and sunny skies, and short, mild winters, rarely having the temperature drop below freezing for any extended period of time. This climate made large plantation farming possible. A good way to remember which colonies were run by large plantation farms were large colonies equals large farms. Besides Maryland, the southern colonies were the largest colonies on the eastern seaboard. The geography of the southern colonies consisted of a dark and mineral-rich, very fertile soil that was prime for planting crops. Both regions had an agricultural-based economy, which the likes of cash crops like tobacco, rice, indigo, and cotton were cultivated for trade. Cash crops were crops that you would primarily sell for money. After John Rolfe cultivated the first crop of tobacco in Virginia, the southern economy was sustained by using enslaved labor and harsh slave codes. So how did southern colonists react with Native Americans? At first, colonists and Native Americans, they were kind of peaceful. However, with the influx of English immigrants to the New World and the need for more land for more plantation crop farming, violent conflicts began to arise between the British and the natives. And when the government failed to aid the colonists from the frontier from the native violence, settlers like Nathaniel Bacon led one of his rebellions that resulted in burning of Jamestown. This continuous westward expansion and clashes with Native Americans would lead to a deadly war in the New World. That's what we're going to go into next. We're going to go into a war because of English colonization and the Native Americans.